Hello everyone, my name is Sarafi and I'm happy to meet you all. And today we are going to be looking at Skull Servants. Skull Servants are a fun deck. They mostly involve summoning a large, powerful monster that you can normal summon. No fancy special summoning from the extra deck, no tribute summoning, just plop a monster down either from your hand or your deck and go to town. The skill that we're playing is called Grit. If you have 4,000 or more life points at the start of your turn, your life points will not fall below 1, works one time only. When this skill is applied, you can only special summon once until the end of your next turn. You can only activate this skill once per duel. So this is the way that we stay alive without any traps. For the main deck we have the Lady in White. Face up level 3 or lower zombie type monsters on the field except the Lady in White cannot be destroyed by battle and are unaffected by spell and trap effects. That's very good. It means that they can't compulse our King of the Skull Servants, can't crack down it. As long as we have the Lady in White, we are not afraid of any back row. This card's name becomes Skull Servant while it's in the graveyard. King of the Skull Servants. The original attack of this card is the number of King of the Skull Servants and Skull Servants in your graveyard times 1,000. When this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can banish one other King of the Skull Servants or Skull Servants from your graveyard to special summon this card. That is not once per turn, so you can keep your Skull Servant alive as long as you have cards to banish. Primarily, though, what you want to do is, just as the artwork implies, summon your King of the Skull Servants, and he's just like, come at me. And then you crash for lethal in one hit. Getting this card up to 7,000 attack points is not difficult, and that will allow you to beat through 4,000 life points with a 3,000 body. You've just got to use your other cards carefully. White Princess. This is our typical normal summon on turn 1. This card's name becomes Skull Servant once on the graveyard. If this card is normal or special summon, you can send one White Prince from your deck to the graveyard. During either player's turn, you can send this card from your hand or your field to the graveyard. All monsters currently on the field lose attack and defense equal to their own level or rank times 300 until the end of the turn. So, nerfing your opponent's attack points will be useful for surviving your opponent's turn or for getting lethal on your turn. Both ways, it's really good, and obviously they stack. You can use this effect multiple times. Sending White Prince from your deck to the graveyard is a great starter, and yeah, this card's fantastic. White Prince, this is our other card that we like to summon on turn 1. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can send one Skull Servant and one the Lady in White from your hand and or deck to the graveyard. You can banish 2 Skull Servants and this card from your graveyard. Special summon one King of the Skull Servants from your deck. This card's name becomes Skull Servant while it's in the graveyard. So neither of these effects is once per turn, and this effect doesn't miss timing. So this card can be triggered off of discarding, linking, being milled, whatever you want to do. Send this card to the graveyard any way you can. Mill, banish a bunch of cards from the graveyard, summon your King of the Skull Servants directly from the deck, and you can make some great plays. White Mare, while this card is in the graveyard, its name is treated as Skull Servant. You can discard this card to activate one of the following effects. Select one of your banished Skull Servants or White Mares and return it to your graveyard. Select one of your banished the Lady in White or King of the Skull Servants and special summon it. So you'll primarily use this card in one of two ways. Either you want to give your King of the Skull Servants 2,000 extra attack points, in which case you discard it and return your banished Skull Servants that you used off of White Prince to the graveyard. Or you can discard White Mare, give your King of the Skull Servants 1,000 extra attack points, and bring the Lady in White back to give it unaffected by card effects. Either way, very useful effects. Skull Servant, it is required to run this card so that you can trigger it off of White Prince. The card is not that useful, but White Prince milling it makes it just an extra 1,000 attack points for your King of the Skull Servants, and that's not a big downside. If the card is in your opening hand, you can discard it for one of your various discard effects, and you'll be fine with that. We are playing 1 for 1. Discard one monster from your hand to the graveyard, special summon a level 1 monster from your hand or deck. If you're going first, you'll use this to get White Prince. If you're going second, you will use this to get King of the Skull Servants. Either way, very useful. Dark World Dealings, each player draws 1 card, then each player discards 1 card. Draw a card, ditch your White Prince, mill 3. There you go. Lightning Vortex, discard 1 card, destroy all face-up monsters your opponent controls. Again, we like to discard, we like to destroy our opponent's monsters, very good. Burial from a Different Dimension. Target up to 3 banished monsters and return them to the graveyard. This will eliminate the cost of White Prince. White Prince banishes itself, Lady in White, and King of the Skull Servants. You return all 3 to the graveyard, and then you get your King of the Skull Servants with no loss in attack points. Very, very useful. And lastly, we have Drag Down into the Grave. Both players reveal their hand. Each player chooses 1 card from their opponent's hand. Then you discard the chosen cards from both players' hand, then both players draw 1 card. This is not as good as a second copy of Dark World Dealings, but I don't have another one. This card is a little bit harder to use because your opponent gets to choose the card that you discard, but most of the cards that you can discard are cards that you want to discard anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. For the next deck, we are playing the Nightmare cards because they are good at discarding. Link Karibo because it allows us to link away White Prince. Pentastag for piercing for our King of the Skull Servants. We Witch's Apprentice because it can return a dark monster that's from our graveyard to our hand. Security Dragon because we can make it with Skull Servants. And Code Talker because there's nothing better. Okay, let's take a look at the replay. So we are going first against Witchcrafters. We don't have any interaction in our hand, but that's okay. We normal summon White Princess. We mill the White Prince, which mills the Skull Servant and Lady in White, and that's all we do. Pass. Opponent normal summons Witchcrafter Pretori, discards the Witchcrafter Unveiling to special summon Heine. Then Witchcrafter Pretori's effect, banish itself to draw a card, discard a card. Banish the Smieta to discard the Witchcrafter Holiday. Opponent is then going to activate Heine's effect to discard a card and pop. We can chain, send the White Princess from the field to the graveyard, lower Heine's attack points to 500. Heine attacks us directly, and Holiday returns to the hand, as well as Unveiling returns to the hand. Our opponent has one set card, and then a interrupt in the form of a discard to destroy a monster. Even our Lady in White cannot prevent monster effects from destroying our monster, so we have to get rid of this Heine before we can do anything else. We draw. Normal summon the White Prince. Then we activate White Prince's effect from our graveyard, banish it along with the 2 Skull Servant cards to special summon King of the Skull Servants from our deck. At this point, King of the Skull Servants only has 1,000 attack points. Our opponent does not consider that a threat, so they pass priority, and then we immediately link that off into our Nightmare Cerberus. Nightmare Cerberus, discard a Skull Servant to destroy the Heine, and since we linked away our White Prince, we also trigger its effect to mill 2 more cards. Heine is going to activate her effect because she has no choice, and she's going to destroy the Nightmare Cerberus. That's fine. White Prince's effect again, we banish 2 more, special summon the King of the Skull Servant. Then we activate White Mare, discard it, return the Skull Servant to the graveyard, and attack directly for 5,000. There you go. It's simple, it's clean. Because you can't be killed, you just let your opponent do whatever they want, and they end up with a bunch of monsters in attack position, and you crash over them, and you win. There you go. My name is Serafi, and I was thrilled to have all of you with me.